It's one of the most indelible images of the last decade as Real TV looks back at Jim Bakker, a preacher once worth millions. The most successful televangelist of his day, carried off to prison without a prayer.
The dark clouds will fade.
With wife Tammy Faye at his side, his PTL network, or Praise the Lord, reached a nationwide audience.
When in doubt, build something more.
But Jim Bakker is even more famous for reaching into the pockets of his viewers and for grabbing this church secretary from Long Island and paying her a fortune to keep it quiet.
I never asked for a scandal, and I'm never going to shut my mouth about this.
In the end, it was Jim Bakker who would pay the most of anyone.
What Jim Bakker represented was not organized religion. He really represented disorganized religion.
Today, Professor John Wilson teaches religious studies, but he was there in the TV studio when it all began for Jim Bakker.
If the camera treats you well, and if you come across as someone that can be trusted, then there are millions of people in America who begin to feed off of what you're saying and doing.
Later, Jim and Tammy Faye's PTL network would rake in donations at a whopping $130 million a year. They lived large, and they built a huge Christian theme park in South Carolina. They called it Heritage USA.
All we need is 25,000 people to fulfill for the Partner Center.
But Bakker oversold timeshares of Heritage condominiums by millions of dollars, and a lot of believing investors were left out in the cold. PTL was a powder keg ready to explode. And this is the woman who lit the match.
I'm just so tired of always being the bad girl.
Jessica Hahn, a church secretary. Bakker was caught writing her a check for over $200,000 to keep her quiet about their affair. Jessica said it was no affair. It was rape by Bakker and one of his pals. She even showed how it was done for the cameras.
And then another man comes in an hour later and has me pinned again, where I have bruises on my back. That is not an affair. That is called rape.
Jessica recovered by posing for Playboy magazine. They gave her close to $1 million. But all the sins would catch up with Jim Bakker here, defrocked and found guilty of cheating his followers out of millions. He had risen to the top in front of the cameras. Now the cameras watched without mercy as Jim Bakker and his empire collapsed.
One thing I hope people have learned is that when somebody looks at you on the TV and says, "Send me money," you don't do it.
Bakker served only 5 years of a 45-year sentence. Today, he's divorced from Tammy Faye and remarried. He lives in South Carolina and is writing a book. And sometimes he'll even get in front of a camera to remind us of who Jim Bakker is and where he's been.
I taught people to get rich, and I felt that God wanted them to prosper. But as I studied the Bible, I realized that Christ had nothing really good to say about wealth.
Bakker says a return to TV is, quote, up to God.